Hello, Joe Diomede here, speaking with John Hagger, a new friend who came down to our part of the world in southern France to visit his daughter, who recently moved here from Andalusia, Spain. Quite international things going on here. And John is a maker, a creator, works with his hands, works with leather, comes from Totnes in England. And I'm just going to let John introduce himself and tell me what is a maker and what is in Totnes, what is the feeling around this. So, John Hagger, welcome to Telemonbron.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. Are you going to hold that? Yes. Well, God, how did I be? I haven't been a lifelong maker. I started making after a midlife crisis. I was 45 when I went to train as a saddler. And I could have done a number of different things, but actually at that time, all of the bridges in my life had been burned. I'd just been through a 2-year process of getting well. I'd been seriously ill. That was at the end of a period of working in finance. I was a life assurance salesman, mostly sort of skating by the seat of my pants. Commission only job. If you sell, you get paid. If you don't sell, you get nothing. But I kind of liked it. I'm a communicator. I like meeting people. I like talking to people, and I was a reasonably successful salesman. But then things took a turn for the worse. I started. It was a typical midlife crisis. The age of 42. Diagnosed with serious illness, secondary cancer, and so I had to take time out. That was on the back of in '91. If anybody remembers '91, it was a time of a serious recession, worldwide recession. Yeah. All my clients went down because they were all like me, small, limited companies. Most of them went down. We went down on the back of it. So I was also bankrupt. So, bankrupt with a life-threatening condition is pretty much the end of the road, I suppose, for some people. For me, it was clearly a wake-up call. It was like, well, you're going down the wrong road. It's about time you change direction. So before I could change direction, the first thing I had to do was to get well. So I went to Mexico, which was the only place that I'd heard of. I mean, it was before the days of the internet, so I didn't have a huge amount of choices.
I heard of what there?
In Mexico, there was a clinic that had a very good reputation with the particular cancer that I had. It was melanoma, and the clinic was a clinic that practiced Gerson therapy, which is a nutritional therapy. Prior to that, I was 10 years in the health food business. I'd had health food shops. So it was secondary. It was like second nature to me. I would turn to nutrition to get well, rather than orthodox medicine. And I had an honest consultant who said that he didn't think that chemotherapy was going to do me any good anyway. So it wasn't like I was being forced down that road. Right. So I chose what was natural to me, and that was nutrition. And they were practicing it in just one place in the world, as far as I could tell, and that happened to be in Tijuana, Mexico. So I went there for a period of 3 weeks to get started on this therapy, which I continued at home with the support of my family and friends for 2 years. I didn't have any orthodox treatment, which actually made me a very good candidate. So my body wasn't depleted it, by
Chemo
by
and-
cytotoxic
yeah.
drugs. So, I had a certain amount of constitutional strength to support the detox, because it was a detoxification. And to do a really strong detoxification to enable the body to fight a very serious cancer. Melanoma is a very aggressive cancer, particularly after it's spread. So I needed all the strength that I could muster, and so I was in, I had a life-threatening condition, but I was in pretty good shape generally.
Right. And mentally as well.
And mentally, I was determined. Yeah. So I started the therapy. It was harrowing, but I had an incredibly strong response. My body turned around the cancer in 11 days. So I was on a downward trajectory. I went down as far as I could go, and the therapy is designed to stimulate the body's immune system to fight the cancer. In modern times, they now call it immunotherapy. It's a way of the body fighting the cancer rather than drugs. The body knows how to do it far better than scientists and doctors. So the therapy involved me having to go home and continue the therapy at home in England for 2 years, which I did, and the tumor completely disappeared after 11 weeks, and I went from strength to strength. But along with that, there was a whole lot of psychological evolvement that happened as part of the process. I got to know myself. And I was having psychotherapy and healing and all sorts. And after a while, after a year or so, I had this awful feeling. I had a symptom which made me think that I was actually the disease, rather than going away, that it was progressing. And I went back to see the same consultant that I saw a year or so before, and he said, "Oh, you're back." He said, "I'm surprised. Somebody else I saw around the same time as you died already." And so that, so I said, "Yeah, I'm still here."
That's nice.
Still here. He said, "Well, what are you doing with yourself?" And I said, "Well, He said, "Are you working?" And I said, "Oh God, no, I don't have time to work. I do this therapy at 60 hours a week. I'm juicing and enemas and all of this stuff. And then on top of that, I'm having color healing and acupuncture and more." And he looked at me and he said, "Don't you think that's a bit selfish?"
Meaning?
He seemed to think that maybe I wasn't worth it. I don't know.
But surely you were just doing it to I mean, you weren't harming anyone else, were you, in doing this? Maybe because you weren't working and had a family? I mean, I don't understand the sentiment.
It's difficult to understand. It's really difficult to understand when, in fact, if somebody who saw only people decline after the cancer diagnosis, they saw somebody who was thriving, one would think that maybe they would want to know more so that they could direct patients. But clearly he wasn't interested.
You wouldn't want to have a selfish cure for cancer.
Absolutely.
Like changing your diet.
I think that might say a lot. Yeah. But anyway. So
be gone with you.
There was there was a lot more involved with getting well. I came to a point where, nobody was going to give me a certificate to say that I was well. Right. I went off-piste and I did something totally unconventional.
Right.
I was on my own. I mean, my GP still, I think possibly my ex-wife tells me that she still talks to patients about my cure. In her eyes, I was a miracle.
Right.
In the eyes of the Gerson therapy doctors, I was a textbook case.
Right.
This is what happens. It seems that doctors these days don't know about how the body heals. The old-time naturopaths, they understood about how the body heals. They know the symptoms. They know about inflammation. They know how the immune system creates inflammation. They know about they just know that they know how to. For example, my body mounted this attack. There was inflammation around my tumor site. I had a tumor under my arm in the lymphatic system. The tumor became bigger and bigger and bigger. It became hot. It became painful. It was just. It was becoming very intense. One night, it completely exploded inside me, is the only way that I can describe it. It exploded. The blood tests I had the next day were all over the place. I was bruised, black and blue, the front of my body and the back of my body. My body had fought this cancer and won. It had destroyed this tumor. My immune system had done that. Naturopaths and the doctors in the Gerson clinic understood all of this. When I came back, I was talking to the homeopathic doctor that told me to go to the clinic in the first place. There was another person in with us, and this person asked the doctor, what would they have done in this country? And the doctor said they would never have allowed it to get to that point. They would never have allowed the tumor to grow to that stage because they wouldn't have known what to do. They wouldn't have known what was happening. But actually the doctors in Mexico, the naturopathic doctors, knew that this was the way the body heals itself. It heals itself through inflammation. So that was that part of my story.
Right. So okay. I should redo my intro. John, cancer survivor, now a maker for the last 12 years, having his shop in Bristol. So that was part one of the interview, which was actually new to me because John is a new friend. He discussed that he had an illness with me, but that was it. We spoke about other things in the 5 or 6 days since we've known each other, because his daughter lives in the village right next to my little hamlet right next to mine. So anyway, so now you healed yourself along with the clinic in Mexico, and insurance salesman done. Why did you get divorced at the same time? You said ex-wife.
Yeah. So we got divorced. She was incredibly supportive, my first wife, Leslie. We got to a point, the kids had left home, and we got to a point where, we didn't want the same things anymore. Mm-hmm. And we separated, we went our separate ways, and we're still in touch, we're still good friends. We still love each other. But, things have moved on.
So you go the alternate ways in all ways, John, eh? Relationships as well, which is good. I mean, the way a natural relationship, sometimes that's the way it progresses.
Sure, naturally. Then one of the big things for me was in getting well was really about mental attitudes, and was seeing that the importance of our attitudes in the healing process. I started working with an American doctor called Carl Simonton, and he was author of a book called Getting Well Again. He was a radiation oncologist. He saw in his practice that much more important more important than the severity of the illness was the attitude of the patient. And it was really important that whatever healing protocol the patient would choose, the best outcome would be if the patient believed that the treatment was helpful. And and he then worked out a program to help patients feel better about themselves and their ability to get well. And so I trained with him and then would teach his techniques of healing as a volunteer in the clinic that I was a patient at previously, which was fantastic. It was great to do that. And anyway, time went on. I trained as a hypnotherapist and just added, thought that would, because I mean, a lot of Carl Simonson's work is based around hypnotherapy, relaxation, visualization, and that was a fascinating journey to be a part of. And then kind of time went on, and then I became a canoeing instructor. I started taking kids whitewater kayaking.
You were talking about from the Steiner School?
From the Steiner School. Yeah. From the local Steiner School. I moved down to Devon. I also trained as a saddler in Walsall in the West Midlands. Walsall in the West Midlands is the home of equestrian leatherwork. There are tanneries there. There's Lorenry. It was Lorenry, which is brasswork, which bought the tanneries there. And the equestrian industry came out of that. We have two centres of leatherwork in the UK. One is Walsall in the West Midlands, and then on the other side of the country in the East Midlands is Northampton, and that's the centre for shoes. And still today, these businesses are thriving. Wow. English handmade shoes are prized throughout the world. So I trained as a saddler. And then eventually time went on and I realized I was spread quite thin. I was a hypnotherapist. I was a canoeing instructor. I played in a band.
Good. Diversity is part of life.
But also at the same time feeling like, I was approaching 60. Right? I was approaching 60 and I had all of these skills. And I really felt like, okay, I need to focus. I need to, to earn some money.
Hone in on one.
Yeah. I felt like I was doing a lot of things, but not really properly doing them. And so I set up a business. I set up Tanner Bates as a handmade leatherwork business. Because of all of the things that I could do, I had a friend one night, and we were having a conversation. He was a therapist, actually, and I said, "Look, Malcolm, I can do all of these different things, but I really just want to do one thing." And he just said to me, really simply, in the way that therapists do, "What gives you joy, John?" Yeah. And it was just that sentence that healed my life. That's what I felt like. It was just that one sentence, because I just knew that I wanted to do leatherwork. Leatherwork was, there was no well-trodden path. I was also trained as an electrician. There was a really well-trodden path for electricians or for solar panels or maybe even hypnotherapy. But actually what gives me joy is leather. My grandfather was a leather gilder in Soho in London. And when I was in America, working with the patients in the clinic, on my days off, I would go to the leather shops there and learn about Native American leatherwork, Western American leatherwork, and I just loved it. I just absorbed it like a sponge, and all my spare time was thinking about designs and bags and all this kind of stuff. And so I thought, actually, I really want to do that. I just want to make a living out of that. And I started Tanner Baits, using the skills that I'd learned at college when I trained as a saddler. And it was really, really rewarding. And I can remember the first time that I put my work out on a stall in Totnes. I think it was a Christmas market, and I put all of these miserable exhibits out on the table in front of me, and people actually bought them. You know, it's like when I looked at these items, all I saw were the mistakes. Right. But you know, I booked this stall. I had to get my stuff out there, and you know, it was just. It just so surprised me when people told me how beautiful they thought the work was, and
now they're collector items.
And then they put their hands in their pockets and they paid me. Right. So it started there, and it went on, and then I became a maker. To become a maker, you have to do things time and time and time again. It's the constant repetition that enables you to cut that straight line in a way that looks just right. You know, it's any maker will tell you the same. You know, I think of potters. You know, the bowls that they turn one after the other. But until you just do it as if it's just a part of you, it's always going to look a little bit fudged or a little bit overdone. When an artist will just do a picture just like that, and you look at it and it's stunning. You know, for them to have got there, they've had to do thousands like that before. They've had to move their hand in that way thousands of times for that to look just right. And you know, I had to learn that. You know, and it's more than just kind of intellectual learning, or it's more than learning skills, or it's more than learning techniques. It's just learning just through repetition. And in that repetition, also, there's a meditation. My favorite thing in leatherwork is stitching, hand stitching, because it's the constant repetition of putting the awl in, making the hole, putting the needles through, taking the needles out of the hole, just doing it time and time and time again. It's the repetition gives you the meditative experience.
So you definitely found your path, you know, from the cancer. You know, some people might say, oh, you know, what an awful experience, but for you, a life-changing experience. And now you have a shop, up and going, a small business, shall I say, actually, and you've been making leather for how many years now in that shop?
12 years now.
And how many, do you have people working for you, with you?
So I've got, altogether, there's 5 people. I've got 5 staff. So here I am in this beautiful place in France, meeting new people and seeing my darling grandchild. And thankfully at home, I've still got an income coming in through my trusted team. I've got a dedicated team of people who love their work.
And did you teach them, or were they leather workers when they came to you, or did they apprentice with you? So have you given your gift to these people? And
I've taught. So it was just me to start with. There came a time when I had to take somebody else on. Mm-hmm. This young man of 17, Will, he came on a course because I was also, you know, to support the income, I was doing weekend courses. He came on a course. He loved it so much that he stopped going to school. He was 17, he was doing his A-levels, and he stopped. And he then decided that he wanted to come and work with me 2 days a week. This young man, Will Harvey, he lives on Dartmoor. Now, Dartmoor isn't far from Totnes, which is where my workshop was on Dartington Estate. It's not far, but he used to have to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, walk 3 miles to the nearest town, where he got a bus to Exeter, which took about an hour and a half. He then got a train from Exeter to Totnes, which is another 45 minutes. He then walked from Totnes to Dartington. So he used to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning to arrive at the workshop at 11 a.m. He'd work the full day. He'd stay overnight in a tent outside the workshop. He'd work the next day, and then he'd go home at the end of the next day. He did that for expenses only to start with. I didn't have enough money to pay him. He did that throughout the year. We were away on holiday in Hawaii this one winter rather, in February. He would stay and continue that work, camp outside. He said some mornings it was so cold he had to crack the ice to get out of his tent. Right? This guy is dedicated, and today he's my best maker. He's still with me. It's now, so he was 17. He must be. It's probably 7 or 8 years later now.
Is in a yurt now, I hope?
He's now building his own house. Wow. Finally, he's building his own house on his parents' land just outside Morton Hampstead on Dartmoor.
Wow, great story.
He's great. He's fantastic. And now he's trained others, and they've trained others, and so now we have a dedicated team who just love the work, and it's very traditional. So it's a continuation of the study that I did as a traditional leather worker, as a saddler. Tanner Bates now is well known worldwide. You know, we sell all over the world as a company that uses natural leather, so that's leather tanned with tree barks, and made in the traditional way, made and finished and edged and all of the things that you do with leather goods, but in the traditional way, as used in saddlery. And we have many clients, many dedicated followers, and some prestigious customers also. And it's so gratifying when customers just come back and congratulate us on the quality of the work. And I always share it with all of the staff. Look, guys, look what you've done. People love what we do. It's so important.
That's a great story. I mean, the first half of the story, incredible as it is, and then it segues into you finding your second life's path into your 60s now, and a successful shop, and on the back of that, teaching others to do it. And this tradition goes on, upskilling, as they call it, not losing the old skills, and working with your hands is so satisfying because you see the end product. John Hagger, thank you so much for sharing both your stories, all of your stories with us. Tanner Bates, Bates. Tanner Bates. Okay.
Tanner Bates comes from tanning. So tanning is tannin is the active ingredient that transforms skin to leather. Right. Okay. It's that is what preserves the leather. Bates goes back to the time before the 1850s, before the Industrial Revolution, when baiting is a process of softening the leather. And in the old days, they used to use dog poo to soften leather. And people used to get the job of, for the finest, most expensive leather, the skins would be put into a barrel, a load of dog poo added, and one of the jobs, the baiting, so if you know anybody called Bates, what they used to do in the old days was to just trample dog poo into leather.
Wow, sounds an exotic job.
What a job.
And nowadays, would Bates?
They've been able to synthesize the active ingredient from dog poo to break down what makes the leather go hard, so it breaks it down.
So there's a lot of dogs out there who lost work.
Yeah, it's a sad story.
Oh well.
Automation, modern day industrialization.
Industrialization. Yeah, there you go. Affects not only humans, dogs as well. And but hopefully the people who did that maybe are a little more appreciative of not stamping poo all day.
Sure.
John Hagger, once again, thank you very much. That was a great story.
Thank you, Joe. Great.
You're welcome. That was perfect. Really, really nice. And just a quick backstory. Funnily enough, he mentioned Darlington Hall. He came to visit his daughter, who lives next to us, who was living next to us, just moving here. And after conversation, we found out he's a communicator. I'm a communicator. And Darlington Hall, where he lived, was a friend of mine and Angie, my wife's, a good friend of ours years ago. Ran that hall for many years, and he and John are friends, and so we're all connected, and we don't deny that fact, John and I, that the connection is real in this universe, and just us sitting in this room here in this international community in the south of France together, knowing similar people. It's been really great, John.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for doing this.
No problem. Joe Diomede, Telly Mombron, from our interconnected world, saying thank you.